provider of broadcasting services in Slovakia related to terrestrial TV and radio transmitters, satellite uplink services, and the statewide network of microwave links. On the radio side, Towercom provides nationwide service for Slovakia's public radio broadcaster and commercial radio license holders. Transmission of analog radio signals is carried out by AM broadcasting in the medium wave and shortwave bands and by FM broadcasting, including RDS services. In March 2006, Towercom conducted the first digital radio broadcast in Slovakia using the DRM system in the medium wave band. Juraj Vodny explained that the first shortwave broadcasts in Slovakia began in 1949 from a station in Veľké Kostolany in the west of Slovakia. There were 4 transmitters with 100 kilowatts of output power. In 1970, the transmitters were renewed and new antennas were added. The Rimavská Sobota broadcasting station was built in southeastern Slovakia in 1956. It began with 2 100-kilowatt Tesla transmitters. In 1982, the transmitters were upgraded to 250 kilowatts. The station has a total of 15 shortwave antennas. Each of the transmitters can be switched to any of the 15 shortwave antennas which cover all parts of the world. Although it's currently off the air, Towercom hopes to resume shortwave operation with analog broadcasting during the B13 season using existing antenna systems. This is assuming the Slovak government allocates new funding to Radio Slovakia International. In the future, Towercom hopes to add digital DRM broadcasts on shortwave. Ladia Hudzovichova works at the Spanish service at Radio Slovakia International. You can hear her on the air almost daily. She was also the primary local organizer of the HFCC conference in Bratislava. Shortly after the Towercom presentation on Tuesday afternoon, Ladia led most of the conference attendees on a walking tour of Old Town Bratislava. On a 20-minute walk from the Sheraton Hotel beside the Danube River, you can see some marvelous views of the bridges which cross the Danube, one of which has a flying saucer-shaped restaurant atop it, appropriately named UFO. You can also see the landmark Bratislava Castle on the hillside above the river. Then you turn north and walk into Old Town, passing by numerous historical buildings and plazas. Our first stop was a small 3-room gallery to see an exhibition of photos from the Bratislava Spring of 1968. Many people are aware of the Prague Spring in 1968, when Czechoslovak communist leader Alexander Dubček began social reforms that were halted by an invasion on August 21st by Soviet and other Warsaw Pact military forces. What many outsiders don't realize is that similar actions occurred in Slovakia, known as the Bratislava Spring. The photo exhibition included a famous picture by Slovak photographer Ladislav Bielik of a protester named Emil Galu confronting a Soviet tank. We were also able to hear recordings of some historic broadcasts of Slovak radio during the invasion, urging citizens to stand up to the invaders. After the photo exhibit, Ladia took us on a walk through other historic sites in Old Town Bratislava, including the site of a Jewish synagogue that had been destroyed during the Second World War. We ended up in a very interesting open-air theater where we watched an English-language version of a play by a well-known Soviet writer of the early 20th century. Walking back to the Sheraton along the Danube River, we were able to get a fairly close view of some of the large river cruise ships that ply the major rivers of Europe these days, including the Danube, stopping in ports such as Vienna, Bratislava, and Budapest. Frequency coordination continued on Wednesday, but ended a bit early so that delegates could participate in an excursion sponsored by Transradio and Ampagon. The delegates were divided into 2 groups in 2 buses. One bus went to the Slovak Radio building, the other to the Kamzik television tower. Then they exchanged places, so everyone was able to visit both locations. The first stop by our bus was the Inverted Pyramid, where we were greeted by Maria Mikushova of Radio Slovakia International. This building houses all 9 networks of Slovak radio, including Radio Slovakia International. The structure was built during the communist era, and it was planned to be part of a long boulevard of buildings of unusual architecture which never really materialized. but the inverted pyramid did. A Slovak radio technician and Anka Dragu of RSI's English section led the tour through the building.
This is the biggest concert hall in the Slovak radio. This is one of the best concert halls in Central Eastern Europe when it comes to the acoustics, especially for classical music. It is, in fact, a recording studio in principle. There are 450 seats, but the capacity is built in such a way so it does not disturb the acoustics. So basically it's like a bigger studio with audience. The organ you can see behind, it's functional, it has 6,000 pipes, and it's one of the few remaining functioning organs of these types in Europe for this kind of like concert hall or like studio. So the sound which is performed, the music, whatever is performed on the stage is recorded and it's edited, and and it can even work as a live broadcast studio. For example, the cultural channel usually broadcasts live concerts which are held here.
We also saw radio drama studios with all sorts of sound effects which aren't used much anymore, since these effects can now be achieved with computers. The ground floor contains a very nice exhibition of photos depicting the history of Slovak radio, along with assorted historical transmitter and studio parts and equipment, and a selection of antique radio receivers, shortwave and otherwise. The building has a few floors below ground and several above, each one about 7 meters wider than the one beneath it, thus producing the inverted pyramid look. On the ground floor, there's actually a small guest house that's open to the public. Incidentally, Slovak television is located in another building in Bratislava. The inverted pyramid contains only the radio. On the outskirts of Bratislava, on a hill with an excellent view of the city below, is the Kamzik television tower. Edita Hoholata and her colleagues from TowerCom arranged a special visit for us to this site. 14. Wavescan will be heard from Nauen in Germany at 15:30 UTC, and these are all Sunday broadcasts. Sunday at 15:30 UTC to primarily Nepal and Tibet on 11,750 kilohertz, 11750. Also at 1600 UTC from KSDA in Guam, beamed primarily to southern India on 15,660 kilohertz, 15660. Also from KSDA at 2230 UTC to the west of Indonesia on 15,320 kilohertz, 15320. Another one from KSDA is at 2330 UTC towards Vietnam on 17700 kilohertz, 17700. And finally from KSDA at 1600 UTC to central India on 15215 kilohertz, 15215. And of course you can hear these broadcasts beyond the areas that we've mentioned as the primary targets as well. That's Wavescan as of October 27th from the AWR stations. If you're a regular listener to Wavescan, you have undoubtedly heard us make frequent mention of the excellent books by the well-known American shortwave listener and DXer Jerry Berg about shortwave broadcasting and listening. Well, we're pleased to see that his fourth book on shortwave history has just been published by McFarland and Company. It's called The Early Shortwave Stations, and it's a 340-page softcover book with a year-by-year chronicle of the shortwave stations that were on the air in the period from 1923 until 1945. After a brief explanation of the prelude to shortwave broadcasting, Jerry's book starts with the famous U.S. station KDKA and its shortwave simulcast, which was an important event in a technological revolution that would make dependable worldwide radio communication possible for the first time. In subsequent years, other stations around the world followed suit, using shortwave to extend reception in their own countries and to reach audiences abroad. The Early Shortwave Stations examines the birth and operation of the large international broadcasters, many of which would have an important role in World War II, as well as smaller stations that were of great interest to DXers. The Early Shortwave Stations is available from McFarland. You can find more information at their website, www.mcfarlandpub.com. That's www.mcfarlandpub.com. You can also find the Early Shortwave Stations at major e-book providers such as Google Play and Amazon Kindle. Our editor, Adrian Peterson, will have more about this book and other important shortwave publications early in the new year here on Wavescan. Colorful music from Madagascar off the southeastern coast of Africa ends today's Wavescan, courtesy of our friends at World Christian Broadcasting's Madagascar World Voice station, coming hopefully in the not-too-distant future. You've been listening to Wavescan, the weekly DX program from Adventist World Radio. Researched and written in Indianapolis by Dr. Adrian Peterson. Next week, the 75th anniversary of the Voice of Turkey on shortwave, and our Australian DX report. If you'd like a QSL card from Wavescan, you can send your reports to Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229, USA. That's Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229, USA. You can email us your comments and suggestions for the program to wavescan@awr.org. That's wavescan@awr.org. I'm Jeff White at WRMI in Miami. Till next time, everyone, good listening.
Tidane Yeshua Hule, Tidate Tibi Hule Hule, Tidate Tibi Hule Hule, Panama Hule Lema Hula, Ya Henane Zai. Ai Henane Zai Huyene Henane Keti Keuke. Sayenge Bua Keti Sikala Bundu Huyene Hata Butepe. Huyene Huyaba Huyaba Maratanu Sangatiramu. Huyene Huyaba Huyaba Maratanu Sangatiramu. Non mi si rado ti andu, un futto te ti tane tu, ti tane ai sua fude, ti dati ti mi hule hule, ti dati ti mi hule hule, panama hule le ma hula, ya henane zai. Ai henane zai huyene he, henane ke ti ke. Sikala bundu